Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, to do your deeper, greater work in the world. I am so inspired by my next guest that I have here, Cheryl Herrick, who is a serial entrepreneur, having led organizations in several markets, including medical devices, apparel, and the automotive industry. Who said that we can't do a little bit of everything, right? And her two latest initiatives are providing motorsport events for military members with PTSD and other wounds of war, and a startup offering new technology homes for the affordable housing crisis in our nation. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I have such a heart for first responders and the military. Both myself, my husband, our family, my father, we're very involved in our own jobs and just military service. So I love what you're up to. And I'd love for you to start sharing, how is it that you got involved in racing and how you started Racing for Warriors?
Sure. So I actually got into racing motorcycles when I was about 6 years old. So I couldn't actually touch the ground on both sides with my feet on the motorcycle. So I'd have to run alongside of it and hop on. And my big brother was racing motocross, which is dirt bike racing. And I saw him do it and I wanted to do it. And I was very lucky to have progressive parents that said, sure, if you think you can do it, go ahead. And so they let me give it a whirl, and I loved it. I had fun doing it. My brother and I would practice together. And so when we grew up later in life, my father and brother and I all came to work together in a company. And that company was the automotive industry. And we had some old classic cars. And because we were working with racers, we thought, well, rather than stand around and talk like salespeople, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the racing arena with cars and race with people and get to know them and let them get to know us and about our products. And it was a good way for us to actually demonstrate the effectiveness of our products in the racing world. So that's how we actually got into it. First in motorcycles as little kids. And my brother just told me recently that our little region in Michigan that used to race motorcycles, now imagine these are like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. They used to call us the Michigan Mafia. It's true, because we would all practice together and like run drills, and there was a few racing teams that we were all on. And so here's all these tiny little kids, but we were little killers on the track. And so apparently some media dubbed us the Michigan Mafia. So
well, I think it's the Mafia for good. How about that?
Right. That's right.
So I love this, the innovation of having somebody in the car with you that, here you are, this kind of almost a closed environment that you have where you get to have a conversation, you get to have that close contact. How did that transition into bringing warriors into that?
So it picked me. I didn't pick it. That's what I tell people when they ask me. I was at an event, and it was a public event, and some friends of mine were organizing a fundraiser for an organization that helped wounded warriors. And so I had two cars at that event. One was my 67 Nova, and the other one was a 65 Nova station wagon that was kind of like a pinkish color. And so we were giving rides in exchange for donations. And so because I had that pink station wagon, they would load carloads of veterans in the car with me to go for a ride. And so I was taking carloads of veterans with me, and they kept having this emotional reaction when I would take them for a ride. And I really couldn't figure out what was going on. But I loved the military. I'd already been volunteering with some other organizations that were doing things for military veterans and active duty. And so I already had like this special place in my heart for them. And so I sat and chatted with a gentleman for a long time. He was a Vietnam veteran. And before we went out on the track, we sat and we were just shooting the breeze for a very long time. And so we went out on track and we came back in the pits and parked the car. And it was me, him, and two of his buddies in the back. And his buddies were like hooting and hollering, and they jumped out of the car, and he was still sitting there. And he just had this like kind of far away, but not unpleasant look on his face, but he had tears just running down his cheeks. And because we'd been talking a long time, I felt comfortable to ask him just if he was okay. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, yes, my brain has not felt this free in 30 years.
Wow.
And something went off in my brain when he said that. And I could not let go of the fact that something had happened to him. And he said, my brain hasn't felt this good since before I left for the war. And when
Wow.
he said that, I couldn't let go of that. And so I nurtured that little thought that I needed to do more of that. And I wasn't at the time sure what it was going to look like or how I was going to do it. But it just was, he impacted me so much. And that same weekend, we were not wearing helmets because it was a low speed race. And I'd been wearing my hair up in a ponytail. And so people were signing up to ride with the ponytail. And so a bunch of the veterans were signing up, not to ride with me, but with the ponytail because it was flying around. And so on that weekend, both the name of my organization was birthed, Ponytail Racing, and the seed of the idea of doing something to give back to those military veterans. That because when he said he hadn't felt that good in 30 years, and he had been talking about some of his experiences, which I won't go into because it's his personal story, but I knew that there was a PTSD component to it, but I didn't know a lot about it at that time. And so I just nurtured the idea that I needed to do something for several years until the pieces came together for me to actually do the program. So everything about it actually was it picked me. I didn't pick it. The name and then the name of the program kind of presented itself in a similar way. I was talking to a veteran and we were throwing ideas around, and I was thinking racing for soldiers, and he said, "Well, that's actually an Army term." And so we came up with the Warriors because we figured there were other first responders as well that might need some support at some point, and it left it open for us to serve the military and other first responders. And so again, it all picked me. I didn't go out looking for it. I can't take credit for any of that. I didn't go looking for it. It just kind of dropped in my lap, and I tried to be obedient to the idea, and then eventually the pieces all came together.
Right. Well, that is definitely a story of being divinely guided, and good for you for listening to that and tapping into that calling. What's so powerful about that is that, with PTSD, that's such a tricky, slippery slope because, it's, there's triggers, right? There's triggers that happen with experiences, and you can't get away from yourself, right? So it's not like you're like, oh, I'm going to leave that incident, that trigger that's happened. And, I've had triggers, when you are, a police officer, when you're in the military, when you see some of the darkest things in life, on a repeated basis, that never really leaves your consciousness. Like it's in there in some way, and there's different things that trigger it. And to have that association, to be in the adrenaline of a race car, to be actually having an experience and fun where you're focusing on something else because that's what is in front of you, to leave that heaviness behind, even for just a moment, is such a blessing for anyone who has experienced that. And I want to thank you for this service that you're providing, and just the excitement of where it's going to go from here.
Well, it's really my privilege. And I say all the time, and I would be remiss if I did not say that my partner throughout this whole thing, since I got started in 2018, none of this would have happened as fast as it did, or frankly, as elegantly as it did, without the Sparkjoy Foundation, who are amazing friends of mine. And when I was just talking to my friend Mary, and she said, "You're always doing something crazy. What are you up to?" And I said, "Well, nothing, but I have this idea. I have this plan of something that I'm going to try and put together." And I was just telling my friend about it. That's all. There was no like trying to make a request for funds or anything. I was just having a chat with my friend. And I told her what I was doing. And she called me back a week later and said, "We're going to fund the first event." And then that was in like, I don't know, maybe March. And between March and June, when the first event happened, they'd come on board to fund a whole year. And they have re-upped so far each year to be really supportive of the program. And so that's just another one of those things where we were just two friends having a conversation, and little did I know that it was something that was really meaningful and touching for their heart as well. And so it was kind of the first boots on the ground program that they did. They donated to other programs that other companies had going, but this was the first one that they were involved from, like, boots on the ground beginning. And so it's something that we've kind of gotten to co-author together, and it's been a beautiful partnership. And then there's one other group, RITEC, that came on board and really supported it as well. So I've been very lucky to have people that I knew that caught the vision with me and that wanted to give back to people with me, you know? And so I've been very fortunate to have had that happen.
Right. So I'm sure that a lot of our listeners who are tuning into this are going to feel your heart. They're going to feel, the importance of this program, and how could they get involved?
So a couple easy things is to look up the Sparkjoy Foundation. If anybody wanted to make a financial donation, all the money's run through them. And so they can make donations to the Sparkjoy Foundation. If they want to see a video or know more about the program, they can go to ponytailracing.com and then click on the Racing for Warriors link. And there's a very fun video that in the veterans' own words explain why they like it. And that was important to me, that they get to talk about why it's meaningful to them. Right. So those are the two best things that people could do if they want to get involved. And if they want to volunteer, they can do that on my website as well. We're always happy to have volunteers.
Right. I love it. I mean, just what you've created is just so powerful. And I know that you take that over into your life in terms of, what you're creating, as far as designing things. And talk a little bit about cultivating your inner circle, because, when you are involved in things where you're putting so much out, right, you got to be able to fill up that vessel. And how are you doing that in cultivating your inner circle?
Boy, that is a good question. So it's another one of those things. I feel like I feel like I use the word lucky a lot, and people always say you're blessed, you're not lucky. And so pick the word that you like, but I feel like I've been extraordinarily lucky to have had people land in my life. And there's two like hallmark characteristics for me if I'm going to have a circle. One is that we have to laugh a lot with each other, and when it's hard and when it's easy, both. So when things are going well, I want us to be able to laugh. And when it's going really hard, I want us to be able to have a sense of humor about it as well. And the other thing is that I want to cheer louder for my friends when things go good than they cheer for themselves. And I would like the same in return. And so for me, those two things, that's what I look for in cultivating my circle. Because if we have those two things, then everything else is going to be okay. Because underneath that cheering for each other, for me, it means that we're always assuming positive intent about each other. And that takes people a long way, because if any kind of miscommunication happens and we're assuming positive intent, it's so much easier to get through it quicker, because nobody is assuming anybody is doing anything to each other. And that's where I see problems go awry. So, underneath that, cheering for each other is that other component. And that I look for those two things, whether it's business partners, friends, even family members. Like, that's what I want in my family relationships. And so that's kind of how I personally cultivate my circle, is by looking for those characteristics in people and by giving that to people as well as wanting it in return. Yeah.
Having that, positive responsibility, and to, really, I love that you talk about laughter, right? Because sometimes that is a forgotten component. And, this is actually super important for the first responders, because anyone who's been in the inner circle of first responders know that we tend to have a warped sense of humor, because we have to find, humor in tough situations. And it's not to make fun of them. And we all have to go through, serious aspects of things. But if you can find even a glimmer of humor in tough situations, it actually helps you move through, PTSD. It helps you, go to the other side, and also to clear yourself more so that you're not just in the straight trauma. If you can have some levity, you can actually make better decisions. You can actually be present. You can actually come on the other end more intact. And that's for all of us, even in our everyday life. I mean, there can be so many stressors. And if you focus on all of the things that are heavy and uncertain, and, especially in these times, the craziness that's out there, if you come back into what can I find that's funny today? How is it that I can connect with someone? How can I make it lighter? How can I make it better? That is the first step to really allow yourself to, when you have those shared commonalities, you get to know people. It's more intimacy, right? And so I love that you're sharing that in your inner circle. And how does that carry over into like your business? Like, I know that you've had a business philosophy that has allowed you to be more confident. I'd love to hear what that is.
Yeah, so I got really lucky in the father that I have, who got lucky to have a boss that he had that sent him to some trainings forever ago by a guy named W. Edwards Deming, who passed away in 1993. So this business philosophy is really old. But it's based on the notion that everything is a system of interdependent components. And if we understand that, then we understand that we don't create departments that silo people and cause people to work against each other and cooperate, as opposed to against each other in competition rather than cooperate. And the minute you switch gears into cooperation instead of competition in every aspect of business inside of a company, we have to compete with people out in the marketplace. It's just a reality of a capitalistic society. It happens, but we can still work on solving common problems together. Even competing businesses, there's common problems that we can look at and say, as a society, how can we work to solve these problems? And so that's a lot of how we view it. And so we want people inside a business to cooperate. And we have a very disciplined approach that we use to do that. And out of that disciplined approach, it creates structure around what we're doing. And the structure actually allows for more flexibility, more innovation, and more fun at work, because we're all on one side of something, looking at the thing over there, saying, how are we as a group going to fix that thing over there? Rather than person to person going, well, I want to do this and I want to do that, which can create clash. We're all standing over here looking at the documentation and the framework that we're using to structure a business and say, okay, how are we all going to make that better? And so for us, that allows for a lot of flexibility and innovation, and for people to have a lot of say so in their job. And most people want to come to work to do a good job. And it's things that are going on in the business and the processes that are being used that actually get in their way of being able to do a good job. And so we're interested in creating a framework that takes away all the noise, all the distraction, and every barrier for somebody to do a good job, so that work can be a haven and they can come in and do their job and enjoy doing it and tease and have fun with their teammates, because we're all doing it together. And so, like private jokes or inside jokes end up coming out of the process of writing, workflow together and all of that. So we're very collaborative in the way that we do things. And when you collaborate with people instead of compete, I'm going to compete on the racetrack, but the minute I park the car, I'm friends with everybody in the pits. So it doesn't go over into personal conflict between us. It's just out on the track that we're competitors. Everywhere else, we're collaborators and cooperative with one another. And so whether it's inside business, outside business, or even in a very competitive arena, we're never going to be so competitive that we're not going to help somebody fix something on their car, or, that we're not going to support somebody if they're having a good or bad day. And so inside business and outside, cooperation for me is everything.
Right. Well, that whole spirit of collaboration and cooperation is so important. And, a lot of the more successful companies have that as part of their core values, that it's something that they stand for and it's something that they look to do. And, people have a competitive spirit of who they are, and you got to find out where that is. But if you can kind of build your team, within your company and say, okay, we as a team are going to be competitive to everyone else out there, then there isn't so much internal competition that is happening there. And to be able to speak to that and be able to have people work together, then I think there's a lot more satisfaction that can come out of that as well, versus this angst of like, is somebody going to be stealing my idea, and am I not going to, if no one's going to hear what I have to say, and really seeing about how everybody can work together. And I think that is such an important thing. Another thing you talk about is having trust. And I know that a lot of people these days, there's been some erosion to trust, who to trust, what do you trust, what's coming up next, what else is going to happen? And there's just so many things with that. And so how does it that you utilize trust of yourself and trust of others?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll start out talking about it from like a personal standpoint for me. I've had to build that over time, actually. I've really had to build that over time. And so I don't know if it's the age that I'm at now. I'm sure that plays a part in it. I've had enough life experiences to know that there are certain things that like my gut instinct about like my personal safety, interacting with other people, being in an environment that I feel more or less safe in. I trust that instantaneously, and I don't worry about it. I would rather trust my instincts and be wrong than not trust them and have been right and be in an unsafe situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I do it in my personal life. In my professional life, the trust factor really comes for us in that the way that we run a business, anybody can know anything that they want to know, maybe outside of the PIN for the bank account. But if they want to know how much money is in the bank account and they work inside the company, they're more than welcome to do so because their livelihood is reliant on that business as well. If they want to know how something is done in some functional area of the business that they're not a part of, maybe they work on production and they want to know how accounting works, or they want to know how sales and marketing works, then they can come in, look at the processes that we've written. They can work it out with their team to come sit in on some of our process meetings to learn. If we can work it out functionally from a business standpoint for them to maybe go on some sales calls and see how that happens, or go to some, if we're doing a TV interview or something like that and somebody wants to go, all of those things are negotiable, and everybody gets to know everything that they want to know about the business. And we spend a lot of time with training people, especially in the beginning. So I get about 80 hours of training that's like C-suite level. So CEO, COO level training that everybody in the business gets. So they understand from a functional level how to run a business at the CEO level, regardless of where in the business they work. And then that then allows them to ask the questions that they want to ask and know what they, give them whatever information they want to know or where to go to get the information. So inside of our businesses, we're not trying to keep secrets from anybody because everybody's livelihood is based on the success of that business. So we're in it together, and they have just as much at stake as we do.
Right. Makes so much sense. And, when people, they see, the success, when you have transparency, that does build trust because they see, hey, everything's out on the table. We're able to show like what's going on. And, for our listeners, they may be thinking like, okay, she's killing it, right? There's all this success. There's all these things out there. But on the journey, right, we all know that there are some disempowering moments or some things there's some stumbling blocks. Can you share just some disempowering moments or things that maybe weren't working and how you move through those to be more powerful?
Oh, sure. I mean, we're in the middle of a startup right now. And if anybody has ever done a startup, you know that there is a high level of uncertainty when you're doing a startup. Because nothing goes as fast as you'd like it to or as smooth as you would like it to. So all of those things are, nobody is immune to that. The only difference for me at this stage in my life with those things is that what I've done it before. So there's a level of belief that I have that we can charter through some of that difficulty that I maybe did not have when I was younger. And, I call him my husband because X seems kind of harsh and he is the father of my children. But my husband and I used to be partners together in a medical device company. And so we'd never done it before. And so everything felt scary. And I never felt like we were going to get there. Like I never knew, are we going to get there? Or are we not going to get there? And it was really stressful. And so it was like a minute by minute kind of thing. And the thing is that neither one of us gave up on the same day. It's like one of the main pieces of advice that I can give to somebody who's doing a startup is neither one of us gave up on the same day. We both gave up, just not on the same day. And there was a point where like he gave up for months and months and months. And so I went in and took over the business and kind of held it together. Right. And so part of it is just like, experience is helpful. And so sometimes we have to turn to other people. And I do this with my inner circle. Like I turn to them when it feels hard. Yeah. And I say, listen, it's like feeling hard right now. And I just need to say it out loud to somebody so that I can take some of the weight of that away. And so that I can get back in the saddle again. And to be really blunt, I was just on the phone with my best friend a half an hour before this podcast, talking about, the startup that we're doing, which I'm so excited about. And I really love it. And we're in the grind right now. We are really in the grind right now. And so she and I were having a conversation and she goes, how do you persevere through it? And I said, it's the same thing here in our little band of misfits that are building this startup, do this affordable housing. None of us are giving up on the same day.
Right.
I swear that's half the game. Half the game is that most people don't realize that when it gets really hard, it actually means you're getting closer to it getting easier. That's actually getting you closer to the tipping point. But most people think it is this hard, which means it must not be the right idea.
Right. Such a great distinction. So important. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when we're focusing and everything's getting poured out into, the business and life and all that, one question I always like to ask my guests is that we have different experiences in our bedroom versus our office and our kitchen. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
Oh man, that is a toss up between the room I'm sitting in now, because the desk I'm sitting at is my work desk, but right behind me, that desk back there, I kind of call it my sacred desk. So that's where I do my journaling in the morning and my meditation and all that stuff. So that's kind of like my little personal space. So I love being in this room, and it's been very cultivated, like all this stuff back there on those shelves, and there's shelves like that on this side of the office as well. So I really cultivate my space because I'm a very visual person. And so aesthetic is super important to me. And so that is a big thing. But I will say it's a toss up between this room and my bedroom, because I love snuggling in my bed and reading a book. Or one of my favorite things is to have dinner in bed, which I know seems weird, but it's almost like room service at home.
That's so fun. I love it. That's so good. Well, you've got your hands in all kinds of great, good things. And, our theme this year is being a force for good. So how are you being a force for good?
Me personally?
Yes.
Good question. Well, I try to pick businesses or initiatives to be involved in that I think are doing something good in the world. And so if the thing is not doing something good somewhere for someone, I don't want to be involved in it to begin with. And so that's really how I make my selections of what I'm doing. Even if I just go racing with my friends, and it's not to do a Racing for Warriors event, but just to go racing, we still like to be really welcoming to new people in the community. We want to, if somebody we've never seen them before, because there's a really strong, tight-knit group of us, we really go out of our way to welcome that person in, give them pointers, let them come, bring your chair over, sit with us. If you don't know anybody, there's no sense sitting over there by yourself. So in big and small ways, I'm a team person. It's in my DNA to do things with a group.
So you invite people into the racing mafia, like it's an open mafia.
It is. But well, I was going to say something that may not be appropriate for your listeners, but don't be a jerk. That's our one criteria. We're going to welcome you into the group until you prove that you're a jerk. And if you prove you're a jerk, we're going to give you a chance to straighten that up. And if you really don't straighten it up, bye. Because we want to have a supportive group of people, and we don't want people that are going to come in and mess with that.
I totally get that. Oh my gosh. Well, you and I could talk about this all afternoon. You're up to so many good and great things. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they do that?
Instagram is the place where I am the busiest. If they want to do social media, and that's at Ponytail Racing. That's the place where I'm the most consistent and the busiest over there. So that's the best place to find me. They can direct message me there. I always check those messages. Or the website, they're more than welcome to go to the website, send me an email. But Instagram is super fast. That's the fast way to get at me.
Well, perfect. Well, I just want to thank you for your service and your just great contribution of what you're doing for our first responders and warriors. And just want to thank you for being here on the show.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the service that you've provided to our society as well. So it's genuinely appreciated.
My pleasure. Absolutely. And to our listeners, without you, we can't get these positive, great messages out into the world. So please make sure that you share and subscribe, put in any of the comments, any ahas from the show. We make sure you tag both Cheryl and myself. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now.